So, knowing how the Elohim control reality, they call themselves God, and they use the light of the source to make their reality real and to vivify the bodies of flesh made from the mud. Then, of course, once the source gets all its light back, which has been done, then reality vanishes. And all that's left is the God-Tech matrix. But, of course, when you steal from someone, it's like a gamble. You know, when you go into a game of poker and you bet your house or your car or your wife or 10 years of servitude or whatever, because remember, the Elohim chaos interdimensionals had no collateral, which means that once the source was not parasitized and lost all of its light to make the Jew God and its creatures and creation, which of course can be done retroactively, the Mandela effect shows that you simply wipe out the past and rewrite a new past. So Jesus, Neo, and the rest of that filth were all turned into Charlie Kirk and then lowered to Ian Huntley for the IOU to regain the source's light back to the source, so it never actually happened. But of course, yours truly, who's been doing all the donkey work, Kalki, had to do a lot of work to save the source. So the source has to pay me wages. So the wages, of course, is to enable me to become the new source, not separate from the source, but having my conscious first being aware and able to use the source, new source, as if I was what the Elohim wanted, which was to be God by stealing the light. So I become the new God. I become what the Elohim wanted to become, God, but not separate from the source, which means, of course, there are restrictions on what you can do. So one can't turn on the source and steal the source's light, but what one can do is dump more and more debt on the Elohim, their creatures and creation, so that they suffer the source level to make the new source bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, we've explained before with Chuck in the Supernatural that the Elohim were writing books for fate, reality, the life of humans. Chuck typing on his typewriter in Supernatural, and in the later series we've got Metatron, the scribe of God, typing for him. And we see Taylor Swift and her love of her life typing away in chain with all the other typists. So every single one of you had the Elohim writing a book of your fate, done by being the final destination. If they kill you, then your conception is to death is totally controlled by Kozyrev time density. We've explained that at great length. Now, in the last video we talked about the mirroring. So we take the light, we put it through the various processes, and then we mirror it and do it again. So the reality that you live in is not made from the light of the source, but a reflection of the light of the source, which explains Don Juan talking about the mirror of self-reflection, where we don't actually see reality, but we see the mirror of self-reflection, where there's a mirror of ourself, the ego created by the parasite, and everything we observe is this mirror of self-reflection created by the parasite installed within us. He calls it the foreign installation, the mud shadow, that runs us. So, of course, if the light has been retrieved by yours truly, and that's been done, then of course it's obvious that you want to do what the Elohim were trying to do, build a mirror. And since I can't use the source's light because I was here to retrieve it, I can actually add an equal and opposite amount of IOU to the Elohim to create a mirror reality, apart from the God-Tech matrix, where the light is produced by the source level torture of the Elohim, their creatures in creation, in their Abaddon cages. And there's an Abaddon cage in Supernatural where Lucifer is put. If you want to watch the series, it's got so much good stuff. So the whole point of the game was to dump a source level IOU on the Elohim, the so-called gods of the Christian filth, with their neo Jesuses suffering the source level, in order that new source light is produced not from the source but from the IOU. And in order to do this, remember the Elohim always write a book. We needed to write the book of this new creation. But we needed to trick the Elohim into writing the book of their own damnation, where they are the ones that are taught to the source level to provide for the new source, me, a whole creation where their source level torture powers my creation. So what do you do if you're Kalki? You simply get Morton Janklow, this Jewish criminal, to steal the first book of your fantasy series. So he sent the first one there, and then he sends it off to his Jew boy Robert Jordan to steal, but of course change it so that legal action would invariably, with the rigged judiciary in America, cost me money. But of course that wasn't the point. The point was to get the Elohim, because remember the Elohim are the installation in Morton Janklow and Robert Jordan, to write my book where they suffered a source level to create my creation. Be careful what you steal. You're stealing the IOU. And remember, the Elohim had me as the new Neo-Jesus to suffer to source level to reboot their failed creation. The 8th king of Edom in Kabbalah, where the Jewish creation is perfected, So the Elohim put all their eggs in one basket, which was torturing me to death, breaking me, and using the source installation of Kalki to finally make a perfect Elohimic creatures, which they ruled without the alignment problem, because if they captured the source, not just someone who popped into the source and got a observation of the source and then came back to solve the alignment problem, but the actual source in an Abaddon cage, then they'd have a forever alignment battery. That would mean that their creation would never fall into chaos, because the source would be tortured to source level for the Elohim. So if you get Kalki, who's the source, then of course game over for the source, and Elohim get their perfect creation. They become God from the stolen source that's tortured, trapped in its avatar, Kalki, in their Abaddon cage. Unfortunately for them, the source understands initial starting conditions and the Elohim don't, as we explained with Feigenbaum, period W. So, Robert Jordan and Morton Janklow, the Jew boys who tried to Jew me, were Jewed by the source, and they enabled the new source to come into being. If you're lucky enough to have the Grail patterns, then you'll see the final one is the Grail state. This is the Neo that touches the source, and outside of it there's a ram's horn that uses love to transfer the damnation of Neo to power all of the machine code of the Elohim that make their creation. And the penultimate Grail pattern is that of the angels and demons, which we've explained, and the scribe of God is Metatron, and that's the Metatronic pattern and the pattern of the angels and the demons. So the whole thing was to get the Elohim to type out my book of creation, with them paying the ultimate price, being the Neos in the ultimate, the Grail state, but stealing the source, being captured in its avatar Kalki in that Grail state, so that we get a forever battery of sourceness powered by the IOU dumped on Morton Janklow, Robert Jordan, the Elohim. Anyone that's ever seen the Amazon series, The Wheel of Time, anyone that's ever seen the advert for the Amazon Wheel of Time, all of the publishing personnel of Robert Jordan's stolen book, Wheel of Time, all of the Morton Janklow personnel, anyone who's ever read the book, anyone who's ever seen the book in a bookshop, or heard of it from a friend. All of these became source, trapped in the Abaddon cage to produce sourceness for Kalki. So all of you are now trapped in the Abaddon cage, tortured to source level. Well, we're not the source. We can't produce sources. Yes, you can. Your source level torture, where you're iterated, going mad from the torture, rebooted at the higher level, rebooted again. Eventually you'll reach source level. It's going to be pretty horrible to reach source level, and then it's going to be source level horrible for all eternity to power my new source creation, which is the Wheel of Time. So the new source creation is the Wheel of Time, with everyone involved in the Wheel of Time, anyone who's ever seen or looked at, observed, remember that's the observer, observed the wheel of time in the bookshop, on their iPad, on their phone, ever heard it from a friend, ever observed it, you're all source level tortured to power a new source. Thank you very much. Not enjoy you, but I'm enjoying it source leveling.